we'd like to bring onto the stage John Textor, who will be interviewed by Ted Cohen. Ted is really one of the great brains and knowledge brokers of the business, someone who has a broad realm of experience and a perfect interviewer of John. So John and Ted, welcome to the C&W stage.
It is my extreme pleasure to be here today with John. I'm going to let him take it away. We did an event in Los Angeles in February, and I called him up to say, hi, John, it's Ted Cohen. He goes, hi. He says, you're going to be interviewing me? I went, yeah. And then I went, EMI. And he goes, it is you. And I went, it is you. And I'll let you take it from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cohen is not exactly the most unique name. So I wasn't sure if it was the same Ted Cohen, but I didn't even tell the story the last time we were together. But I walked into your office, I think in probably 1999.
It was early 2000, yeah.
Yeah, I was waxing poetic about the future of virtual reality and the convergence with the music applications. And I had this idea that if we were going to be downloading music on the web, remember at that time, Napster and Metallica were really going head-to-head with each other. I really was bothered by something as rich as a music experience being delivered through these very stale websites. You know, web pages back then were just layers and layers of text, and it didn't seem to me to be the right environment to appreciate poetry or music. And so we started building these 3D worlds for Metallica, for the Wu-Tang Clan, and I thought if anybody's going to deliver music through the web, it should be the band designing a space and experience and environment for the fan. And then we'd put these downloadable kiosks within those rooms, and you didn't exactly laugh me out of your office.
No.
You were very nice, but
well,
it was before its time.
But I had just come from working with a friend of yours, with Tom Kidron,
yeah,
at Worlds Inc. that was doing, I mean, so it wasn't a foreign idea. Worlds Inc. had built rooms for Elton John and Aerosmith and whatever. That you guys were working in the same space quite aggressively in terms of upping your game. It was good that both of you were there because everybody kept getting better and better. So the concept wasn't unrealistic. I think our concern always is, if you're on the label side or the artist side or whatever, is are we beta testing for you or is it ready for prime time?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit, because the real question is, if we were all talking about VR and the convergence with music, entertainment, other sort of rich media apps, why did it take so long? We're here now talking about virtual reality almost like it's a new thing. It's a really old, tired thing that was way ahead of its time back in the 90s, and there's some reasons for that. One of the big issues that you had at the time, which nobody could really overcome, it was all about rights protection back then, and the labels were all taking different positions as to what they would allow, and everybody was learning on the fly. The big problem we had back then is this 14.4 modem speed.
Exactly.
And you couldn't deliver anything that looked too good over a phone line, and that was the world we were living in back then. I forgot about virtual reality, frankly, for a number of years, because you can only bang your head into a door so many times and decide to do something else. But I'm thrilled that it's come about. The question is, why did it take so long? I have a theory, which, as one of the early geeks, in this space, I guess you have to understand your limitation. But we were technology people that kept sort of seeing this world that would come, convinced that everybody got it and everybody understood it just like us. But, content has always been king. And by content, I don't just mean good graphics and visual effects and neat tricks. I mean the kind of content that stirs the soul. While technology may have been changing the way we do everything every couple of years, every day, the way we create content, really good content, hasn't changed in years. We fall in love and we write a poem. We break up and we write a song, probably a country song. And the poets, the musicians, the filmmakers, the artists, those are the real content creators. It's not the geeks. As much as I thought everybody was going to get it, only now, when the leading entertainers are starting to engage in this space and see virtual reality as a canvas on which they can now paint, because the screens are 4K, and some of the interocular anxieties and the discomfort we're addressing.
Talk about that for a moment. You turned me on to a phrase called interocular anxiety. If you've gone to
I've had that my whole life.
If you've gone to a 3D movie where they're really, like early, 2-3 years ago, when they had objects really close and really far, you actually would start to get a headache trying to look. Am I looking at the foreground? Am I looking at the back plane? It's getting better now where the movies that are not trying to wow you actually let you fall into the movie and follow the story, as opposed to, that was a great effect. So you have the term for it, which I'd never heard before.
Well, it's obviously not my term. It's just it's the discomfort that we feel, because we all need to be visually grounded. We get seasick on a boat because we lose sense of the frame. If we look down too long and we're constantly being bounced around, we have to look at the horizon to overcome it. If we feel that in a plane, we have to look out the window. And in a 3D movie, and visual effects generally, which has been my business, I've been privileged to be a part of that industry for so many years, we're in the business of tricking the brain. Well, the brain doesn't want to be tricked. The brain wants to be grounded. Mm-hmm. And if you think about 3D movies, you're giving a left eye image and a right eye image, into the brain at the same time. If you really stretch the parallax, of that image, you create objects that come off of the screen. If the infinity point is built to be behind the screen, as James Cameron, played around with so masterfully in Avatar, you really are invited into a 3D environment. Right. And that's a lot more comfortable. The more we stretch the brain, the more we trick the brain, and this is a big challenge in VR, the more uncomfortable, we make it for the audience.
Why don't we look at a couple things to give people some context?
Yeah, I think the thing that, the context, what I do now, I build digital humans. Our team of digital artists, we all come from the visual effects industry.
Can you build me a digital girlfriend?
That's the most common request.
Okay, fine. I'm not the first?
We always say no. That's like building the atom bomb. What comes after that is the problem.
It usually is the atom bomb that comes after that, yes.
So I think what I want to show you, I'd like to set it up a little bit. I'm concerned, as a very passionate believer in VR and a hopeful dreamer of AR and a big fan of companies like Magic Leap and what they're doing, I'm concerned that we're never going to overcome this sense of imbalance and this disorientation that we have when we put on goggles and our entire frame of reference is dominated by the visual. Now, what I believe we can do to make that better is push to hyperrealism, the kind of visual effects that we see in feature films, fluid simulation that's exquisite, looks as real as if you were standing there with the right physics in play. Digital Humans, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, is a film that was produced and directed by David Fincher that we worked on when I was at Digital Domain. That was the first believable digital human that acted for 52 minutes. So I think if you're in a virtual world, you're in VR, you're going to meet other characters. They're not going to be made of flesh and blood. They're going to be digital. They might as well look really good. And if we're going to overcome the discomfort of the VR experience, I think it comes through realism. I still don't know that we can overcome the lack of visual grounding that we need.
There's even more bigger question. Is VR, more so than AR, is VR an isolationist experience? Because it doesn't feel, if all of us right here were wearing either Oculus Rift or Samsung VR, Gear VRs, is that a social environment or is that an insular environment? And how do we stay connected in that environment without feeling that we're, in sensory deprivation tanks?
Well, it depends on the application. And VR has been very much the domain of gamers. But
who live at home with their mom.
Right?
I'm sorry to all you gamers.
Every time I buy my kids, the new, headsets or, the VR goggles or, they still take them, they use them, it's fun, it's great, but then they take them off and they're sitting in the room and they're playing FIFA or Call of Duty with a group of friends all sitting on a couch and they're all loving watching a flat TV because the experience is playing the game together. So every time I try and amp it up with tools and devices to make the game experience more immersive, for my kids, you know, it lasts for a week. And
It actually disconnects them a little more.
yeah, so your question, though, is VR insular or is it a community experience? It's a lot like video on demand. Remember when the internet was invented and you and I were around to watch it happen? I guess, I'm sure Al Gore was the inventor. There was this thing, video on demand. It's, you know, it's still there, but it's, you know, any video you want, the content you want, when you want it. The convenience was a big argument.
Right.
It didn't really work because people like community. They like watching something at the same time that they feel that the rest of the world is dialing in and connecting. It's our partner Simon Fuller. He has this show that just saw a life cycle end, American Idol. Well, it's the experience of watching that at the same moment with 50 million other people voting at the same time.
But then we binge House of Cards. We binge Harry Bosch. We binge, you know, they drop 13 episodes of...
Sure.
You know, what's it with the Angie Tribeca?
Everybody needs, you know, to go into a cave from time to time, but we still like going to movie theaters and sitting next to the obnoxious guy who's crackling his wrapper, who's eating his popcorn, who's whispering to his friend.
The reason we like that?
Because we actually like people.
Okay.
We don't want to admit it, but we love people and we love community. So VR, you know, I love what YouTube is now doing. They're, you know, with immersive 360 cameras, placing them in concert environments. And now they're streaming it up on YouTube, which is a flat experience. But obviously, they're just waiting for enough Oculus Rift or Morpheus goggles to get out into space. So you can dial into a concert in Brazil. Celine Dion's going to be there singing. Instead of her selling 15,000 tickets to the experience, you can sell 20 million. And I can put on the goggles, sit in the front row, and not only look at her, but look behind me and see a real audience. So VR can be insular, but it can also open up doors to humanity on the other side of the globe. It's all application dependent. Okay. So
let's go to the big screen.
Well, it's a quick journey into the world of digital humans. Okay. Sorry about this sound treatment on the logo. Just a couple of points I want to make about what I think is really terrific that's happening in VR that didn't happen in the early 90s. I mentioned a moment ago that the great entertainers are now coming into the space, creators of films and music and art and poetry. And it's not just, we recently announced at our company that Simon Fuller has joined us. He's our new largest shareholder. And when people like Simon, who really know how to inspire audiences and connect us to content and performances, when they start developing applications in VR, you know, that's when the world, I think, gets pretty exciting. On the back end of that are the people that need to create these visuals. At our company, we're privileged to have digital artists that have spent their days at Industrial Light and Magic, at Digital Domain, at Weta, the greatest visual effects companies creating the imagery that you see. We're character-based at Pulse, so folks on our team, like Tim Naylor, the rigging supervisor for Transformers, and Davy Jones. Stephen Rosenbaum was our visual effects supervisor for the Michael Jackson Experience. He was the Oscar-winning VFX soup for Avatar. But we're a character shop, and when you're building a digital human, you rely on all of your experience, whether it was a near human, you know, an alien, the character Gollum. John Feather on our team was very involved in that. Or as you can see, Benjamin Button, Tupac, where they're actually much more realistic. So you start with people from the visual effects industry that I believe are way beyond, you know, the game space, because the game space has always been very limited based on the capabilities of the development platform. So we're thrilled to be an extension, new opportunities for visual effects artists. Some of you may have heard that industry has been under attack in the United States as offshore incentives and labor markets in other parts of the world have made it tough to maintain that industry here in North America. But you know, now we have all kinds of new things to do in the world of virtual reality and augmented reality. I'll take you back to the curious case of Benjamin Button just to remind some of you what a digital human looks like. And if we wouldn't mind taking down the volume just a little bit. I'm sure they'd love to hear Brad Pitt more than me, but this is my moment to edit him. So this was a digital human character that acted for 52 minutes of the feature film, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and the character had to age in reverse. So there was really no way to do this effectively and artistically with prosthetic makeup. We had to build a digital head, place it on top of an actor body, and hope that you wouldn't notice. Well, I think we did a pretty good job. Everybody on the film, David Fincher especially, ended up creating a character that was so convincing it won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. And when the gentleman walked up and grabbed his makeup Oscar, there was a 20-foot-high image on the screen behind him, which was the digital human face of Benjamin Button. So I run into people all the time that say, oh, of course I knew that was fake. Well, you didn't mention it before, and I think we did a pretty good job of not only fooling the public, but fooling the industry. Brad Pitt was, of course, nominated for Best Actor for his performance in this film, and one certainly wonders how much of that was because of his portrayal of an older man that was computer generated for the entire first hour of this film. Now that's in a film environment, and keep in mind, everything in virtual reality, it can be filmed content, which is flat, that you look at and see within the goggle environment, or it can be a CG object that you can see from all sides and walk around in a VR environment. But here, this is a flat application on a feature film screen, and that was the image that I really enjoyed seeing on the stage at the Academy Awards that night behind the guy holding his makeup Oscar. And it was a great moment for him. It was probably not such a great moment for the runner-up to the Best Makeup Oscar, who actually probably used makeup. But
was there any fallout from that? When they realized they gave a makeup award to something where no makeup was ever put on anybody?
That is such a no-comment territory for me.
Okay, fine. So what'd you think about the Cavaliers game last night?
I think I just rejoiced in the man's Academy Award, and I'm sure he did great work over his career, and he deserved it. So I guess the next sort of big trick, honestly, I'll concede, it didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time when we were doing it. We had roughly 20 artists at Digital Domain. I recall it was 105 man-hours. Our team, led by Ed Ulbrich and Eric Barba and Janelle Croshaw, a bunch of people were hired by Dr. Dre to bring their friend back to life. This was Tupac at Coachella. This was similar to Benjamin Button. It was a digital head on top of an actor body. It may have been easier to come together because, as you'll notice in this piece, he didn't have hair, so the hair simulation was not a big challenge. The facial animation was easier to achieve because the microphone was in front of his face the entire time. But notice why this was a special performance. This was, again, some of the greatest content creators in that space, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, developing a performance, staging it in such a way to really invite the audience to sort of be a part of it. Tupac walked out on stage, and the first thing he said is, what the F up Coachella? And at that moment, you knew you weren't looking at canned video 15 years, before. It was a new experience.
Can you touch on one thing? There's a lot of discussion that always goes on around the technology behind this, and it always goes back to, is this Pepper's Ghost?
Well,
Can you explain what Pepper's Ghost is, maybe just for a moment? I don't want to get hung up on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk. They even parodied us as characters in the hologram episodes of South Park. So maybe I want to embrace the word hologram, but it's not something you hear from us. Really, that's talking about a projection technology. And Pepper's Ghost is this 100-year-old projection technology where you're basically reflecting an image off of a piece of plastic foil. And the audience just sees the reflection, and therefore anything you put in front of or behind the foil, can be real. And so you're able to set an animated character in a real environment and have the character feel like he's part of that environment. And that's how Tupac was delivered. And ultimately, that's how Michael Jackson came to life at the Billboard Music Awards. Now, we'd come a long way since 2012 with Tupac. The experience with Michael Jackson, we really wanted it to look more like a fantasy. Obviously, Michael had passed away. And as this particular song opens up, it was important that we sort of step from a fantasy environment, and slowly during the performance, he feels a little more real as we go along. You notice some of the characters, including his own, came to life out of a Klimt-style painting. Now, as he walks down the stage, the stairs, the visual effects disappear. the background disappears. In the background, there's a real keyboardist, there's a real drummer, those are real columns, and we have live dancers in the foreground. He's surrounded by dancers that are both real and holographically projected. And we really ease the audience into this very real experience with Michael, because there's a point in this video, well, number one, this is a song that nobody had ever heard before. So this was a new release of Slave to the Rhythm. So this couldn't have been something he performed before. And so that the audience is already kind of understanding. But when we get to the point where it's only Michael, he's in his typical dance break, which is, the part of every sort of, performance we love when he's performing live. He walks behind this dancer.
Is that a real person?
Well, she's real.
She's real, okay.
And of course, he's behind her. She kicks him on the leg right there, which is a neat little trick. And then he walks in front of her. So if you're trying to figure out, well, where are the strings, where the screen, you've kind of lost sense of what, the trick is. Now he's out on the stage. He's all alone. You're going to see real flames, pyrotechnics come in behind him. And the goal is to take this Pepper's Ghost image, bring it out into the environment, and you can only do that by producing a whole lot of real, pyrotechnics and dancers and drummers and everybody else on stage. At this point in the performance, if you're standing 10 feet off the stage, he felt like he was right there in front of you. And we had 30, 40 people in tears at the front of the stage watching this, feeling like they were connecting with the character.
Now, this is 3 years old?
This was 2014.
Oh, this is 2 years old. And let's take a look at where it went from here.
Well,
if you can't, I don't know.
Yeah, so this is the image of Michael in a sort of a pre-production environment. Of course, we're now giving away the gag because the dancer was also inserted into that environment and projected as a hologram, which is the only way she could actually kick a hologram on the leg. But at that moment, as you were watching this, of course you thought she was real and you knew Michael was a hologram, and the interaction between the two on stage was important. Now, the technology has gotten better and better. We've built a facial rigging system with 18,000 kind of moving parts. Every polygon has an intersection. Every vertices has a vector, which indicates range of motion and the capability of that portion of the face to move and create different poses.
Yeah, one of the first things, when we first talked, when we reconnected a few months ago, I was talking about lip syncing, and you went, it's so far beyond lip syncing. When you look at the muscles in the neck, when you look at the jaw clenching, when you look at everything that happens when a performer like Michael Jackson performed to capture
look
the
at
intensity.
hair. So, Simon Fuller has recently announced that we're going to be doing a world tour with Elvis, and we're also creating a digital pop star from scratch. Well, in a stage environment, you're expecting to see the face of your performer not only on stage, but more than half the time you're looking at the big video panels above the stage, and their hair is dry and their shirt is dry, and they start and they come out and they say hello, and 2 songs into it, they're sweating through their shirt. And so if we're really going to have the audience believe that this character is there and performing, or even though it's obviously not a real character because it may be Michael or maybe Elvis, the hair is going to start perspiring, and his image is going to change throughout the entire performance. Our tools are getting so much better. If you look along the right side of the screen here, those are all of the different movements of the face. It's a lip curl, it's an eyebrow raise, and it's not enough just to have those work independent of other expressions. They have to work together. When a character smiles, sometimes that smile is pure joy, sometimes there's fear and there's apprehension, or there's anxiety. And so the behavior of the eyes and the behavior of the mouth, they may be selling 2 different emotions, but together they just sell one. And so our facial rigging system is such that we're able to really combine all of those, make it much easier for the artist to build these performances that are uniquely Michael, Elvis, or whatever character we might be building. This is just a quick little, if we can keep this really low volume. This is a combination of technologies that show you that we've got to do more than just build the face and the body. We've actually had to animate clothing away from the body because it's not like a movie where you've only got a few scenes. We now have to build a character that's going to go through wardrobe changes and maybe sponsored by a different apparel designer. You can put them in Hugo Boss or Ralph Lauren. Now, it's important as we talk about Michael Jackson. I get this question a lot. I was just asked a lot about Prince recently, which, to be clear, that's not a phone call we're going to be making anytime soon. Digital likeness is as important to a living celebrity like a Ronaldo, a David Beckham. You know, as living celebrities, their digital likeness is being conveyed through video games, through different kind of electronic apps. And as much as we think about our photographic license and our image, our photographic likeness and our image, we need to think about that in a digital environment as well, especially as we move into virtual reality, because when we encounter digital humans in VR, sometimes there are going to be avatars that represent other users. They might represent celebrities. They might represent AI, right? So Project Watson, we've all seen the commercials with IBM. Well, if Watson can think, can deliver a sentence, with that sentence, I can deliver that into a digital human, and Siri should be, you know, a digital human talking back at you. And
I recommended Siri yesterday as Trump's vice president.
Well,
we were going through the list of candidates, and I went, Siri, what is my NATO policy? Siri.
Oh, I think the only chance he has is if he picks Condoleezza Rice.
That's it. Yeah, we're agreeing on that. We've got 2.5 minutes left. I want to at least get a couple of questions from the audience.
Well, I do want to show you the latest Michael Jackson face. It's one treat for the audience because we haven't shown this publicly yet.
Okay.
This is a quick reminder of what Michael looked like in 2014. And as we take this back to a conversation about VR, if characters are really going to engage with us in virtual reality environments, they need to be incredibly realistic. And so the computer avatars, the VR avatars, the characters that you're going to see in the future, we now have this capability. And this is where Michael stands today. And razor stubble, the fluid, meniscus fluid in the base of his eye, the lacrimal caruncle, the tear duct, all of the imperfections of human face that make us as humans perfect. So ultimately, we think that the way to make VR more engaging is hyperrealism, and that's not only the environments but some of the characters. It's not right for every application, but many. And if an AI engine, if Project Watson is speaking to you, we think it'll be speaking to you through a digital face that looks to be of this quality. Digital signage all over the world when you're trying to find your train and you're in Japan and you don't speak the language. Well, we're going to have digital butlers, digital teachers.
What do you think of the GE glass plates? You've seen them? The digital assistants in a convention center that says, welcome.
Well, it's cute, right?
Cute.
But I mean, I'm a huge fan of AI because I don't know why we're still typing text into Google, only so Google goes out and finds matching text, and maybe it's the answer. Watson's consuming 800 million pages per minute or some ridiculous number. So you're getting an answer based on knowledge. So when you ask a computer a question, you want an answer, and I think the answer is going to have a human face. And, I can put a digital teacher in classrooms in, North Africa on a flash drive that give perfect response.
And it is a challenge. I was talking to a guy who works in speech, in speech recognition. He said they've identified so far 500 different ways to ask for the weather that need to be assimilated to understand what's the temperature right now? What's it like outside? Yeah. What's it going to be later tonight? Is it cold out? Whatever those triggers are to get back the answer that you want. He said, just for the weather, there's 500 different ways to do that.
Well, this gets back to the point, the internet. We talked, it was invented, right, by Al Gore in the mid-90s. We still go to the web for 3 fundamental reasons. We go to buy something, conduct commerce. We go to connect with people and communicate, or we go for information. Right. And, information shouldn't be something we have to work so hard to get through Google, through web pages, based on the algorithms of search. We should be able to ask a question, get an answer. And I think digital humans are going to be everywhere. I think they're going to be representing AI. I think they're going to make life a lot easier. They're going to make education more effective and more globally deployable, ubiquitously accessible. And we're going to see them in VR. We're going to see them in AI. I don't know if we do have time for any questions.
How close are we to Ray Kurzweil's vision?
It's 2016. Really, we have the technology to do this stuff now.
Are we there?
Yeah, of course. The challenge is getting the world to wake up to it.
Mm-hmm. We'll go a minute over. We're 1 minute over. We'll go an extra minute if somebody has a really good question related. Go ahead, as loud as you can.
One of the things you touched on really early was how it can be an isolating experience to be in VR for more than a couple of minutes. How can you see us overcoming those challenges to get people into VR for, say, an hour and a half to 2 hours?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to sound like, you know, the world is flat. And I'm going to make myself sound like a real dinosaur. I mean, I have real concerns about the inability to overcome that sort of interocular anxiety with no visual grounding, which is why I'm such a big fan of AR, right? Because you're constantly grounded in reality. We can make it better. We can go from 4K. I've seen Sony's developing 12K. You see the face of digital human looks a lot better than any video game you've seen. Well, I'm pushing for hyperrealism as much as anybody, but unless you have the ability to really ground yourself visually in reality, I think it's going to be tough because we've been trying to solve seasickness for years and we still haven't done it. So it's a concern, but we'll see. I'm rooting for it.
One last question. Anybody else? Over where? Is it? I can't see anything. Oh, wrap it. Oh, come up here and wrap it then. Come up and say goodbye to us. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it then. We are 2 minutes and 30 seconds over. I'll give Rob $10.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you.